Hello, NBA fans, and welcome to Playoff Report. In today's episode, we will be discussing all of the ins and outs of the NBA postseason so far. So we are going to be discussing the NBA play-in tournament. We are going to be discussing the NBA playoffs, and I'm going to be picking out the best games to highlight. And we can either reminisce if you've seen the games, or I can bring you up to date and show you some of the choice pickings of this year's playoffs, which has been great so far. I think that this year's playoffs has really delivered, and we are going to start off by talking about the NBA play-in tournament. And the play-in tournament, in my opinion, has been one of the most successful additions to the NBA formula when it was introduced a couple of years ago. There have been some absolute barn burners, some really exciting games that we've been able to watch, and this year was no different. So there are a couple of regulars in the play-in tournament. So there are the Heat, the Hawks, the Bulls, the Kings. It seems like those teams are in the play-in more often than they are not. And this season had something very familiar happen, which was the Miami Heat eliminating the Chicago Bulls, which they have done for the past 3 straight seasons. So if you're a Bulls fan, condolences. That is not what you want to see. They'll be all right, though. They're probably one of the teams that is not the worst off in the play-in tournament. There's a couple of other teams that are hurting a little bit worse. But let's talk about the games that were worth watching in that play-in tournament, because there were 2 absolute bangers. And the first of which was the Warriors versus the Grizzlies. And this was the 7-8 seeding game. So this was a win and in game where the winner would go on to face the Rockets in the first round, and the loser would be sent down to the lower bracket to fight for their playoff lives to be matched up against the Oklahoma City Thunder. So not only was it a seeding battle, you'd obviously want to draw the Houston Rockets, but also you don't want to get bumped down and have to play another game to get in. And then once you get in, you have to face the buzzsaw Oklahoma City Thunder. So this was a pretty impactful game, and it really delivered. Both of these teams have made the playoffs in the past. The Warriors have won a championship in recent memory just a couple of years ago. And it was a really close game. The Warriors were up for the majority of the evening, but the Memphis Grizzlies made a comeback and got the game within single digits, and in fact got the game within 1 point. And the Warriors had to have some vintage performances from Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry. Jimmy Butler having 38 points, Steph Curry having 37 points in order to win this game. And even though the Grizzlies made a comeback and they got within 1 point, there were only a couple of seconds to go left in the game. Steph Curry got fouled, hit some free throws to put them up 3, and then the Grizzlies did a very Grizzly-esque thing, which is make an unforced error, a brain fart. They committed a game-losing 5-second violation right at the end of the game when they were inbounding the ball. They could have tied the game with a 3, but they turned the ball over without even getting the ball inbounds, and that pretty much sealed it for the Warriors. But it was still a very compelling, exciting game. Lots of really interesting performances. Unfortunately, guys like Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr. had, nightmarish games. Who knows what he was up to? But the Warriors showed something that we'll talk about a little bit later, because they played against the Houston Rockets as well in the first round. We'll talk about that because that was an interesting game. But they did show that they had a couple of issues with size in this game. And while they did play Edey very well and made him look kind of silly in certain aspects, Zach Edey's dominance on the board and ability to score inside did cause a couple of problems. And we're going to see something when we discuss Golden State Warriors and the Houston Rockets a little later in this video. So that was a good game in the play-in. But the other game, and this was also a win and in, but it was the final play-in game in the East between the Heat, who had managed to defeat the Chicago Bulls on the road and advance to the final play-in game, where they faced the Atlanta Hawks, who had lost their first game against the Magic and were forced to play against the winner of the 9-10 battle. So this one was a win and in. It was also an elimination game, so whoever lost was out. And so lots of drama. And it did not disappoint. This was one of the best games of the postseason so far. The Heat led for most of the night, and this was behind a really good scoring performance by Bam Adebayo, by Tyler Hero. They were getting contributions from a lot of different guys, except Hayward Highsmith, who was, shooting bricks all night long. But they were doing a really good job keeping pace, scoring, hitting shots. It was pretty masterclass performance. And another reason that they were kind of winning this game pretty easily was that they put the clamps on Trae Young, who had a really, really miserable first half of the game. He was very cold. And just like in the game against Orlando, it was exactly the same thing. So Trae started cold in that game and then heated up in the second half. Same thing with this game. Started out very cold in the first half, made a big comeback in the second half. And in fact, he and Okongwu, who I think is a little underrated, overhated, he had a really good game in this one. He was hitting threes, he was making defensive plays, he was dunking the ball, converting around the rim. I thought he had a really good game, and Trae Young also had a really good game too. This, coupled with the Heat's we forgot how to score thing that they've been doing all season. So the Heat have given up major leads and blown games that they looked like they had in the bag all season long, with just huge cold stretches where they looked absolutely miserable, which is part of the reason they fell to the 10th seed. They were just not playing very good basketball toward the end of the season. The vibes looked bad, and they were just, bumbling these games. And it looked like they were about to do it again because the Hawks took the lead in the fourth quarter, and behind just a completely ice-cold Heat performance, they managed to kind of put the brakes on the Hawks train and start scoring themselves. And between Tyler Hero and DaVon Mitchell, the heroics from those two made it a 2-point advantage, with the Hawks getting the ball for the final possession of regulation. And Trae Young did a really good job. He got to the rim, he scored with a layup and sent it to overtime. So this was an overtime game, and it was an elimination game. All of those things that you love to see that really raise the stakes and makes for a compelling game was on full display in this one. And it was in Atlanta. They were going wild with this furious comeback that they were making. It was just really exciting. In overtime, it was kind of the Heat who really came to the fore and had some heroic performances from both Tyler Hero, but especially DaVon Mitchell. And DaVon Mitchell has a, special place in my heart because he played for the Toronto Raptors this season, and I didn't have a lot of expectations for him because he didn't really impress in Sacramento. He's not quite a point guard. He's not really an on-ball creator in the way that most point guards are, but what he is a dog. And he somehow, I guess the Miami Heat with their black magic infused him with the ability to nail three-point shots. And he has been a great three-point shooter for them, even though in, Sacramento and in Toronto, he wasn't a very good three-point shooter. Put on that Heat jersey if you want to be able to hit shots. And man, he hit a bunch of really clutch shots, especially in overtime. And then he did what he does on the defensive end, which is, make defensive plays. He drew a really important charge late in this game in overtime. He was kind of the hero for them, and wishing nothing but the best for him. He was an exemplary pro, helped bring a lot of players along in Toronto, and you can tell that he's like a really solid guy. So really cheering for them. The Heat managed to win that game, send Atlanta home. And that's a little unfortunate for Atlanta. They have been on the treadmill for a while, but they did get that big boon last season when they managed to secure the first overall pick, and they picked up Zachary Rizachet, who had a really strong end to the season, and they have some injuries. So probably their second best player went down with injury toward the end of the season. Jalen Johnson was having a career year. They're having, an emergence from Onyeka Okongwu, who I think has really shown that he could be a pretty solid big for them. He was great in that game. So I'm not too down on them. I think Trae Young, he's saying the right things, looks like he wants to be there. So I'm not too down on them moving forward, even though this probably wasn't what they wanted to see moving into the offseason. Same with the Chicago Bulls. The Chicago Bulls made a bunch of trades, and a couple of them look like they've really worked out for them. They made a really solid pick in Matas Bucelis. He has looked really good for them as a rookie. Kobe White has been good for them. They made a trade that at the time I kind of poo-pooed, and most of the NBA did as well, which was trading Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey. And, Josh Giddey was fresh off a performance with the Oklahoma City Thunder where he almost kind of lost them the series just because of his inability to shoot, and he kind of needed the ball in his hands. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, is an MVP candidate, so it didn't quite work out there, but it has worked out a lot better for the Bulls, and they've got some interesting pieces there. So it's not looking too bleak, although obviously they are still kind of on the treadmill until they prove otherwise. With that said, the other teams that came out on the losing end here, number one is the Dallas Mavericks. They I don't need to relitigate all the stuff that went in there, but it's not looking too hot there. Maybe for the immediate future when Kyrie gets healthy and they have AD, maybe they can make, put some stuff together and look good for next season. But in terms of the long-term outlook of that franchise, they pretty much screwed the pooch on that one. It's not looking too hot for them long-term. And then the Sacramento Kings. So the two West Coast teams that didn't manage to make the playoffs, they're looking real rough. So the Kings, they fired pretty much everybody. They traded away De'Aaron Fox, and if you look at the other guys that they also traded away, so DaVon Mitchell, he's had a great season. Tyrese Halliburton, he's an all-NBA caliber player. It's just a disaster there, and the team construction with Sabonis, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to build a functioning competitive team like they've wanted to. And it really seems like the magic is worn off there and the wheels have fully fallen off. So not looking too hot for them. It looks like they might have to rebuild yet again after, giving it a shot and not really getting to where they wanted to go. So yeah, that was the plan. Very exciting games, but so we're going to get to the actual playoffs. And I'm not going to talk about all of the series because there were a couple of, snooze fests, blowouts, expected results. So we're not going to get into those. I'm going to talk about the series that I want to talk about. And there were a couple of really exciting ones. There's some teams that were lower seeded that were able to defeat the higher seeded teams. So we'll start off on that foot by talking about the Lakers and the Timberwolves. So the Lakers have really compelling high-end talent, and especially at the positions where it's generally agreed that that kind of talent is the most important. The guys that I'm talking about are primary creators. So they have one of the best in the whole game, Luka Doncic, who is a transcendent offensive talent, scorer, playmaker, shooter. He can create better than, most of the players in NBA history. He is a generational offensive talent. He's fantastic. They have the old guard, LeBron James. My goodness, he's still doing it. He is still a very capable player. He's sort of taken on a secondary role. He's trying to be a connector, more of that sort of background player that helps you win championships as more of a role player, but he's still got some juice. He's still got some fuel left in the tank. And then Austin Reeves, who really came on this season, really established himself as a scorer, a playmaker, a player that you can put the ball into the hands of and feel really comfortable. And he's going to give you a good look at the basket, a good shot attempt from somebody, maybe him, maybe a guy he passes it to. So those three guys are players that you look for, players that are going to give you a really good chance to win a game based on what they can do on offense. With that said, the other guys on the team, they don't have a lot of, versatile secondary players on their team, role players, quality role players that can play on both sides of the ball. They've got some issues there. The Timberwolves have a couple of distinct advantages that were on full display in the first game of this series, mostly depth, size, and a defense. So those three things are generally, when you think of those things, you think role players. And it's true that the Timberwolves have a role player advantage, but they do also have some high-end creation as well. Anthony Edwards is one of those players, and even a guy like Julius Randle can create on offense as well. So it's not like they are without scoring options. It's not like they are without guys who can contribute on that end of the ball, but they are more of a well-rounded team, and that was on full display against the Lakers in the first game. The Lakers bench only scored 13 points in this game, very sparse, very underwhelming in that department, and also their defensive scheme involves a lot of helping. For example, one of the guys that you constantly have to make up for because he is a defensive liability is Luka Doncic, and generally he makes up for it on the other end. This is not an issue. You would clearly want to have Luka Doncic on your team because he does so much for you on the offensive end of the ball, but you do have to make up for him on the defensive end. And they have to help quite a bit because they don't have a dominant big man protecting the paint. And as a result, there was a lot of overhelping. There was a lot of, adjustments that they had to make, bringing extra defenders over to double players, especially when Julius Randle would get the ball in the high post against Luka Doncic. That is a mismatch that you don't want. You have to bring over extra help. And they were able to make the extra pass and find open shooters on the perimeter and then make their shots. So they've got some guys that can knock down some threes. Naz Reid, Jalen McDaniels was very good in this game. Especially Anthony Edwards, he's a really good shooter as he's shown all season long. So they have guys that can make shots. They really punished the Lakers from 3-point range. And then on the glass, a lot of it is about size. The Timberwolves are just a much bigger team. Rudy Gobert, even Julius Randle, and Naz Reid. Those three guys, you can play them, cycle them on the court, have one of them or two of them on the court all of the time, so they have a distinct height advantage. And then the Lakers tried to play small. Jackson Hayes is not a very good player, so he only played 8 minutes in this game. And so the Lakers tried basically going small. And sometimes that can work on the offensive side of the ball. When you're a little faster, you have more perimeter guys, you can score and shoot a little bit better, but then you're going to really get punished on the boards and on the inside and, with rim protection and all that kind of stuff. And it all came to a head. There were some impressive scoring performances. Luka Doncic had 37 points on 22 shots. So he had the offensive game that you would expect from a player of his caliber who rises to the occasion in the playoffs. Austin Reeves, had a decent night. LeBron James had an okay night, but it was all very difficult. It all looked really hard against the Timberwolves half-court offense. The only person that was able to really make a huge difference and make a big dent was Luka Doncic. But in the end, it was Minnesota's game, and they were the better team. They were the bigger team. It was much easier for them on both sides of the ball. And this allowed them to take a game off of the 3-seed Lakers. And I think really it looks like the Lakers are not built for this season. They do not really have a competent front court that is going to be able to keep them in the game by doing the dirty work. And it's going to come down to, the star power. You're going to have to outstar the Timberwolves. And when LeBron James and Austin Reeves have kind of iffy nights, then you're just going to lose, because you need all three stars to be shining brightly if you're going to be able to beat a team like the Timberwolves, who has some depth, has some size, all of that kind of stuff. So this is a compelling series because it is a lower seed taking it to the higher seed. But I don't know if this is exactly an outcome that is totally unexpected. These are I think that the Vegas lines said that this was a pretty even series entering the contest, and now it's definitely in the Minnesota Timberwolves' favor. If you win the first game of a series in another team's home court, then you have home court advantage, and they might even win the second game just based on how this one went. So that's an interesting one. We'll start with that one. The Lakers are kind of the opening course. Everybody wants to talk about them, so we'll talk about them first. The second one we're going to talk about, another very popular team, the Golden State Warriors, the 7 seed against the Rockets, the second seed. This one was also a seed upset. So the Rockets have home court. They were playing a team that had just entered via the play-in tournament, and usually those contests are pretty easy to predict. You choose the team that didn't come out of the play-in tournament, but this is no ordinary play-in team. This is a team that has two of the best playoff performers in the league, in Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler. And Steph Curry has tortured the Houston Rockets fan base and their team, for the past decade. So this is not an ordinary 7 seed. And yeah, that was the case pretty early on in this one. The Rockets came out firing. Şengün had a really good start to the game. He was very difficult for the Warriors to stop. He posterized Draymond Green on one of the first plays of the game, really sick dunk. But then the quality of the scoring for the Golden State Warriors really showed the caliber and the difference between what they have in terms of scoring and what the Rockets have. So Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry, those guys can score against good defense. And they really did. They had great nights, the both of them. And they're a cut above guys like Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green on offense. Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet had nasty shooting nights. Fred VanVleet, as a Toronto Raptors fan, I've been following his career, and I know one thing about him is that he is inconsistent. I don't expect him to shoot this poorly for the whole series, but he does have some issues with consistency, and both he and Jalen Green had nasty nights from the field. They shot a combined 7 for 34 from the field, and a lot of it is just unforced, just bad process, and also just not being able to make the shots. I don't think this was necessarily the Warriors putting on this insane defensive performance. It's just that these guys are both pretty inconsistent, and yeah, Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, those guys really came to the fore and delivered, especially Steph Curry. Wow, he had an unreal performance, hitting crazy shots, fading in one direction, another, logo shots, torturous. I mean, I couldn't even imagine being a Rockets fan and just getting this demon in the first round yet again. Must be deflating and, you know, soul-rending. But there were some signs of life from the Rockets, and there were some things that I expect to see a bit more in Game 2. And so Steven Adams has been injured for the better part of the past 5 years, and he has not been able to contribute meaningful basketball minutes to pretty much any team. With that said, he has become healthier again. And now, in this past game, he was one of the best Rockets. And the Rockets' two big men, so Steven Adams and Alperen Şengün, had the most success against the Golden State Warriors. And Adams did a ton of damage to the Warriors on the glass. His size was a big issue. This is what I wanted to talk about when I spoke about the game against the Grizzlies in the play-in tournament with the Golden State Warriors, when I talked about Zach Edey and them having problems with size. So the Golden State Warriors were successfully able to play Edey kind of off the court because of his inability to guard on the perimeter. Steven Adams kind of has some similar problems, but he is also a problem for the Warriors, and he is a better rim protector than Zach Edey is at this point in his career. And it looked like they were starting to chip away at the Warriors and make a dent and put some doubt in their heads before, you know, Steph Curry went wild and for whatever reason they took Steven Adams out of the game. But that looks like something that could be exploited, maybe not by the Rockets, maybe if the Warriors are able to get past the Rockets in this series, they kind of dodge a bullet there, but in future series, they're very much like the Lakers in that they do not have top-end bigs. So Draymond Green is clearly, you know, really talented front court player, but they are lacking guys who can really bang in the post and create extra possessions and do all the big things that you need. Like if they were going to play either Nikola Jokic or Ivica Zubac at any point in the playoffs, they're going to have some huge issues with those guys because those guys are way better than guys like Steven Adams. So that is something to keep your eye on. Next game, I don't think Fred VanVleet and maybe Jalen Green. I'm not a huge believer in Jalen Green, but I don't expect them to shoot as poorly next game. But stealing one on the road for the Warriors has to feel good. That is a big win for them. And this is a big deflating moment for the Rockets because it looked like they had finally figured out their demons and put together a competitive team. But yeah, I don't know. NBA is all about star power, and it looks like the Warriors might have them beat in that regard. So we'll see how that series progresses. Next up, these next two ones are really kind of the series of the playoffs, and we have 2 games under our belts with both of these series, and we got to talk Knicks and Pistons because this has been a really compelling series. Lots of back and forth, and a lot of the time it is the Pistons just taking it to the Knicks. And in game 1, it was a nightmare for the Knicks starting the game off. The Pistons, Cade Cunningham, everything was going right for them. They were making shots. They were making plays, they were executing on both ends of the court, but the Knicks do have Jalen Brunson, who has, I mean, may not be pretty. You may not enjoy watching him kind of flop around like a fish, but he is a very talented player. And in the first game, he was able to lead a full comeback, and they had a huge come from behind victory in the Garden. Everybody was going crazy. Brunson came back, put on his Superman cape, and was able to carry the Knicks to a victory in game 1. Game 2 was a different story because we saw a better Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham went off and had a fantastic game. He has looked like maybe, if not the best player in the series, you know, maybe that's Jalen Brunson, but the second best player in the series, and the Knicks really don't have an answer for him. The Pistons also led for the whole game in this one, but the Knicks tried, you know, the comeback yet again, fueled by guess who? Jalen Brunson. And in this one, it was just kind of too little too late, and there was not enough helping hands. In the first game, Karl Anthony Towns did have a good game. In this one, he was completely MIA. He only had 10 points in this game, and they really didn't have another guy who could step up. Mikal Bridges had an okay night. He had 19 points, but really came up lame at the end, and it did not result in a win. And honestly, this has looked like a Pistons series so far. They have looked like the better team. The Knicks are kind of lucky to have, put together that miracle run at the end of game 1. And they tried it again in this game, but the Pistons weathered the storm and were able to split the series in New York. So they are probably the favorite in this series, and I'm kind of cheering for them. I'm not a huge fan of the Knicks. Sorry, Knicks fans. But Karl Anthony Towns, I'm going to remember him for, popping his jersey, beating a really kind of crappy Toronto team this year. He's a big-time actor. He really likes the theatrics, but, if you're going to give a performance like he did last night with that really kind of no-show, maybe he's not what he thinks he is. Who knows? But I'm really excited to see the rest of that series. Now, we're going to get to the crown jewel of the first round. This one is the series of the first round. Might even be one of the best series on paper, just in terms of a matchup that you could envision. Two teams going together. This is almost like a Western Conference final that you're seeing here, because the two teams are so talented. You get to see the creme de la creme, the best players in the league. And the two teams that I'm talking about are the Clippers and the Denver Nuggets. Man, we are seeing some elite basketball. Nikola Jokic, you don't have to talk about this guy too much. Everybody knows who he is at this point. He is a 3-time MVP. He looks like he could have another one brewing this season. He's having the best season of his career. He is a fantastic player, and he has been good this series. Although in this past game, there were some issues caused by the Clippers. On the other side, no stranger to myself, Toronto Raptors fan, Kawhi Leonard is, when he is right, and when he is healthy, and when he is on his game, is a monster, a robot, a scoring machine, a defensive menace, just like a cyborg that is dead set on winning you a game. So those two players clashing in the first round with some really compelling and exciting secondary storylines, secondary players. It has been a tour de force. I've loved watching these games. The first game was a barn burner. The Clippers, just kind of like the Knicks and the Pistons, the Clippers got out to an early lead. The Zubats Harden pick and roll has been very effective against the Nuggets. Nikola Jokic, if he has one weakness, it is defense. So they have been spamming that play, and it has been very fruitful for them. They had a really good thing going. What happened, though, is that there were just a ton of errors by the Clippers in that game towards the end of the game that let the Nuggets get back into it. And boy, did they ever. Nikola Jokic came up big. Christian Brown came up big. Russell Westbrook, man, this guy is so chaotic. But he had some clutch moments in this game. The Nuggets were able to rally, send it to overtime, and there is a notable moment here right before overtime, right at the end of regulation. Russell Westbrook showed the bad side of the coin by refusing to take the final shot of the game and threw it off of a player's leg. It was like a what the hell moment. But then he made up for it in overtime when he made a couple of really, really compelling plays on both ends of the court and kind of showed the other side of the coin. So Russell Westbrook is like an agent of chaos. You never know what he's going to bring. Sometimes he brings a really good play on one possession and then the worst possible play on the next possession. So it's very difficult to get a beat on what you're going to be getting, but he's been much better than I thought he would be entering the season. I thought he was fully washed. And in the first game, he actually showed his merit and was able to help carry them to victory. But a lot of it, I'm kind of selling one guy short, and Nikola Jokic had a dominant game in the first game. The second game was the Kawhi Leonard game. This was one of the best playoff performances I have ever seen. This is not hyperbole. If you watch this game, it was almost unbelievable what he was able to accomplish in this game. He at one point was 10 for 11 from the field. He missed one shot over a stretch, was well into the 20-point range, free throws, threes, etc. And then he missed a couple of shots and then went right back to scoring on almost every time he got a shot off. He would score. Denver was trying to double him, get the ball out of his hands, and it was working to a certain extent. But eventually it just came down to Kawhi Leonard making plays, not just on offense, on defense as well. The Clippers, their defense is very good. They have some really strong role players. Ivica Zubac is an excellent rim protector, big guy. They've also got Chris Dunn, and that guy is a defensive menace. He has been really helping them turn over Nikola Jokic. Him and Kawhi Leonard playing off of the ball are able to read what Jokic is doing, especially in this second game. Nikola Jokic turned the ball over 7 times, especially on the final possession when it looked like he wanted to make a pass. Kawhi Leonard stole the ball, and that was the game. Kawhi Leonard was unbelievable. And you're seeing two guys who are Hall of Famers. Nikola Jokic in my opinion, is a top 10 player of all time. Kawhi Leonard, I would say, would be top 10 all time, if not for his injury history. He is that good. So you're seeing two prime players near or at their peak competing at the highest level, and that is compelling basketball. That one is tied, that series, it is going back to LA, and I think that the Clippers have shown enough that they are probably the favorites in the series now, but you can never count Nikola Jokic out, even though he needs more help from his other players. Michael Porter Jr. had a good second game, but a horrible first game. The Westbrook is very inconsistent. Jamal Murray has been good. On offense at least, and even on defense he's been okay, but they need some more contributors, especially off of the bench. So this is going to be this is going to come down to the wire. I think this might be a 7-game series. I am dying to watch the rest of this series. And those are the playoff series that I wanted to talk about, but I do want to know what you guys think, not just about this format, because this is something that I'm trying out. I haven't really done one of these before. I'm mostly a Toronto Raptors content creator, but I did want to talk about the playoffs. I'm really invested in watching them, and I've been rewarded so far. Lots of really exciting series. Are there other series that I should talk about? I haven't been too impressed with some of the other ones. Maybe there's something there to talk about. So let me know here in the comments. And that's going to end the episode. I'd love to hear from you. If you're not a Raptors fan and just watching this channel for the first time, or if you are a Raptors fan and you're returning, let me know what you think about this content. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments, and also on Twitter and Blue Sky, where you can reach me at Raps Report. Love talking to Raptors fans, but also NBA fans. Let me know what you think and follow me there. And if you haven't already, please like the channel and subscribe. I am going to be creating videos like this, not just for the playoffs, but I'm also going to be talking about the NBA draft. So if you want to hear about the NBA draft, slam that like button, slam that subscribe button. Let the algorithm know that this is content that should be shared with other NBA fans like you. And as always, thank you for tuning in to Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors and NBA content.